This is Frieren, and Frieren is really popular. Like, really. So popular that it's reached heights that neither me nor anyone else could have really foreseen at the start of 2024. If you think that Mal is any type of reasonable metric to judge an anime by, you may have noticed it's sitting comfortably at the top of the highest ranked anime, substantially higher than the longtime giant of my anime list, Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood. This has essentially made it the de facto king of anime. So what's going on here? What's all the hype about? Is this shit even Kino? After 28 episodes and about 127 chapters of reading and watching, I can firmly say that Frieren is really good. And it's definitely worthy of its crown. So I guess I should start with what drew me in. High fantasy is a genre I've always had a penchant for. Since I was a young lad, tales of epic, sword and sorcery, good and evil held me captivated. One thing I noticed in my many years as an anime fan, my long tenure has shown me that anime really lacks high fantasy. I'm talking about the Tolkien-esque epics that once dominated the fantasy market. As diverse as the fantasy genre is in anime, Japanese fantasy often has a penchant towards either low fantasy or isekai type animes. So you'd best believe I was really excited when they said that Frieren was going to be more of a high fantasy type of anime. So let's talk first impressions. One thing that anime has been getting really good at recently is making exceptional first impressions. So good that they can trick people into thinking that husks of a show are worth their time. Frieren is not one of those shows. I've been mistaken about the quality of shows in the past, but Frieren really felt exceptional. It was kind of a gut feeling, like I knew that I would like this show 28 episodes from now. That feeling is held through all 28 of those episodes. But what hooked me? To put it simply, vibe. Cascading walls of a medieval city, a party of unlikely heroes, reminiscing on a tale of hardship and heroism, the tavern and streets of Chia. I'm a sucker for it, really. And the first episode does a really, really good job of setting up the core idea of the show to me. The mere 10-year journey, and how time works differently for Frieren. I was hooked, and you know what? It only gets better. Frieren is like an exponential graph. It starts slow, with a steady pace, but a good one. Takes its time, uses the first 3 episodes to set up the world and story, and then after that's done, it starts slowly increasing the pace. Starts with some great action sequences around episodes 5 to 9 before slowing back down. I'd say the first 10 episodes give you a really good idea of the general flow of Frieren. Smaller episodes with less overarching plot relevance, followed by smaller arcs which climax with a large action sequence. As the show goes on, especially coming into the latter half of the anime and manga, the arcs become longer and the scale of the conflict ramps up significantly. As things went on, there are a lot of things I picked up on that I really loved about the show. The first thing I wanted to talk about is the human-demon dynamic. I'm really glad that Frieren went in the direction of demons being bad, more like beasts than human-like creatures. It's funny to say, but it's genuinely refreshing to see a fantasy that doesn't try paint demons as some sort of misunderstood life form. It's like going full circle, to the point where it's now refreshing again to see demons, well, being demons. Not only is it refreshing, but it made for some really great moments. I think specifically of the flashback of the demon who cried mother. I also think that it speaks to Frieren's really strong characterization, that they can essentially make what are human-like husks feel more three-dimensional than the protagonist of some shows. On an important note, let's talk about fights. Sort of the creme de la creme for most anime fans. If I had one word to describe the fights in Frieren, I'd use the word weighted. There is a certain feeling, like every hit dealt is a deadly blow that could turn the tides of a battle. Too many shows I feel have oversaturated their power scaling to the point where world-ending, catastrophic strikes of power feel like pointless trifles in a battle. Frieren doesn't have this problem, and it's mainly because the magic in the fights are far more grounded than a lot of anime. The emphasis placed as well on personal style of a mage's fighting is really refreshing. Expression in fights is something I usually think of when I look at video games, where you can look at how someone plays and instantly recognize who they are. I love how clear it is when a mage has quirks in their fighting, and it makes for really fun and engaging fights.
So I think that this sort of segues nicely into my next point, the characters. Half the show is really the characters, and if a show can't at least deliver on a good main ensemble, it's going to have a really rough time maintaining viewership. Good thing that Frieren has some of the best characters I've seen in a very long time. If the enigmatic and aloof Frieren doesn't draw you in with her cold disposition and contrastingly clumsy and fun eccentricities, you will certainly love the fun ensemble of characters throughout the show. Fern, Stark, and Sign to a lesser extent are a great quartet. Getting the group dynamic down is really important for the fantasy setting, especially so that you can have each of the character archetypes shine. Frieren does this and more. Fern is the quiet, stoic Kudere archetype, which I have to say is actually a character archetype I have a really strong affinity for, mainly because I think it makes for some really funny moments. Her awkward concern for people getting close to Frieren and her general poutiness makes you grow fond of her really quickly. Fern and Frieren really bounce off each other nicely for the teacher-student dynamic, but it's moments where Fern is left to make her own decisions where she shines the best. Especially during her fights, where her skill as a mage is pretty much on full display, allowing her wit and intellect as a character to shine. I also really love Fern and Stark, who have this really cute will they won't they back and forth as they make this kind of awkward and cute duo together. Episode 16 for me would be a highlight, where Fern and Stark dance together. Stark is a lot of fun. His cowardice and a strong sense of moral duty contrast each other just so perfectly. I love the little comedic moments of him begging for help alongside the more serious aspects of his fear. I think Stark is probably the best example of Frieren being a deconstruction of the fantasy genre. It's pretty rare to see the warrior character displayed in this way, especially in a fantasy. The warrior archetype is typically strong, confident, and first and foremost, courageous. Think of Gimli from Lord of the Rings. Stark is all of these things, at least he aspires to be. The aspect of Stark's character that makes him so interesting is how someone can be so strong yet feel so much fear at the same time. And it's overcoming that fear time and time again that makes Stark the most courageous coward. Love Stark, 10 out of 10. But the real standout in the show is most definitely the title character, Frieren. She only gets more interesting as the show goes on. Being a mage that has lived for thousands of years, it's interesting to see how she perceives the world and time as a whole. For her, time is expendable, and she uses it rather wastefully. This doesn't mean she doesn't value her time, rather she uses it superfluously. Or at least that's how they want us to think about it. Rather, Frieren's dedication to mana suppression and finding obscure/rare grimoires is both fun and cute, but meaningful. Frieren is, in the words of Flamme, a mage for the peaceful times, and it's reflected in her kind of nonchalant approach to life. I have to say, I found this part of her character really charming. Of course, she's a lot more than this. Her regret in not knowing the hero's party better is a staple of her characterization, and her clumsy way of trying to understand her party, Frieren in particular, is endearing to say the least. Truth is, I could write a whole essay on my own about why Frieren is such a great character, but you won't really understand what I mean until you've seen the show yourself. There are a plethora of reasons why you should watch Frieren, if you couldn't tell from all my gushing. But definitely one of the strongest for me was just how great Frieren's characterization is. I would be remiss not to talk about the torrent of great characters in Frieren. For brevity's sake, I won't talk about all of them, as there are a lot, but here are some of the standouts. Denkin's skill as a mage is matched by his cold, calculated approach. He is wise and dignified. Himmel's role as the primary source for Frieren's regret doesn't do justice to his character, as he is far, far more than that. An excellent leader, charismatic to a fault, and acute, albeit one-sided affection for Frieren.
Yubel's cold sadism is sure to spark interests from some people. What I find fascinating about her is just how contrasting she is to the other mages, taking kind of a more vibe-based approach to magic rather than the overly analytical magic of most mages. Sign is of course the Onesan-loving priest who I really hope makes a return sometime soon in the manga. His kind of fun, teaching energy is something I've been really missing, to be honest, and for those of you who are beginning to read the manga, I think you're really gonna love Mark's story in the Golden Land arc. I could go on. Really, there are just so many amazing characters in this show, it's hard to fit all of them in. Whether they be longtime members or one-off characters, Frieren just has a really strong way of capturing themes and messages through them. So, bravo Frieren, really well done. So for this next segment, really wanted to talk about the production behind the anime. Part of the enjoyment, for me especially, comes really from the production, and Frieren does not disappoint. The animation is great, highly stylistic with smooth and fluid character motion. Frieren just looks great. Of course, the fights are incredible. I talked a bit already about the weight of fights, so I won't dwell on that too much. However, I did want to point out the awesome looking spells in the show. Zoltrak in particular just feels really cool. Not to mention that there is so much care and effort put into how the fights look, and I feel that I've been spoiled by the quality. In general, the show is really sleek. I can't remember a single piece of off animation. It's not inconsistent with its art quality like, say, JoJo's Part 4, and I have to say, I really respect Madhouse for this. The sound is pretty good as well. Audio mixing is good, as you would hope, and the two OPs are, in my opinion, really cool. The pop vocals on Yasobi's Yusha definitely grew on me as time passed. I remember there being some controversy on how the song fit into the show, but I actually like it as it grew on me with time. The second song, in my opinion, is actually a lot better. I've been a die-hard Yorushika fan since I started playing Osu. Yeah, I know, it's bad. Particularly, I liked Hanani Borai, which was in Whisker Away, and forgive my pronunciation, but Makenu ni Onko wa Iranai, which is a fun J-pop/J-rock track. So I was pretty excited for the second OP, Haru. I definitely felt it fit the overall vibe of the show a lot better than Yusha did, but of course, they're both great in my opinion. As for the OST, oh my goodness. They did a really great job with this OST. Evan Cole has been on my radar for some time now since he first did the OST on Violet Evergarden, and he did not disappoint with Frieren. Perfectly captured the high fantasy tone with some more classically inclined pieces as well. Lutes, lyres, French horns, 12-string acoustic guitars, a couple of Lydian and Dorian modes, and you have yourself a great fantasy OST. I just love the main theme. I felt like when I heard it, I was 12 years old again, sitting in my room reading the words, "A long expected journey" for the first time. I mean, just listen to this.
I am absolutely floored by this OST, and I can't wait for whatever you got next, Evan. So yeah, that's just about all I wanted to talk about in this video. If you can't tell, I really adored this anime. It's been a long time since something this good has come out, and I just really felt like sharing what I loved about this anime. Of course, whenever Season 2 comes around, you best believe I'm going to be watching it from day one. So yeah, if you guys enjoyed this video, I hope you stick around, wait for some of the other content I have planned. Got a lot of ideas brewing at the moment, so yeah, peace out.